All right, let's dive into Stoicism.
Yeah.
You sent us the Enchiridion by Epictetus. It's a great pick, and we're excited to talk about it with you.
Yeah.
Um, and it's interesting because it's not just like a philosophy textbook. It's more like a guidebook, like
Yeah.
a how-to manual for Stoicism.
Yeah, it really is. Like Epictetus is giving you practical advice.
Right. Like
Yeah.
he's almost like a coach for navigating life's ups and downs.
And challenges, for sure.
And he's not messing around either. He compares life to a military camp where you have a role and you have to perform it. Like no matter what it is, it's your role. There's this real focus on understanding what's in your control and what isn't.
Right. And that distinction that's a big one for Epictetus. It keeps coming back to that. So you control your thoughts, you control your desires, your judgment, but everything else, your body, your possessions, your reputation, what other people think of you,
Yeah.
those are outside of your control.
So like if I'm stressing about a presentation at work, it's not the presentation itself I can control, but how I prepare for it and like how I handle my nerves, in the moment.
Yeah. And that's where that example of the broken cup comes in chapter 26.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a fact of life. Things break. Are you going to let that ruin your whole day?
Oh, man.
Epictetus would say no. All about your reaction. Your reaction is what matters.
Okay. So I can see how that applies to small stuff, little annoyances, but what about the big things? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because in that same chapter, Epictetus even talks about like the death of loved ones and like surely we're allowed to grieve those, right?
No, yeah. Stoicism isn't about being emotionless.
Right.
It's about recognizing that, even in those really painful situations, you still have a choice, like how you respond. You can let it consume you. You can acknowledge it, honor it, find a way to move forward.
That's actually that's pretty deep.
Yeah.
So it's not about denying the emotions, but like not letting them control you. Okay, so it's about like controlling how we react, but what about our desires in the first place? Like do we just want things?
Well, in chapter 2, Epictetus dives into desire and aversion, and he actually sees that as the root of a lot of unhappiness.
Okay.
Like, think about it. So much of our modern life is about wanting things that we don't have.
Oh, yeah, constantly.
Yeah.
Social media is basically a highlight reel of stuff that you should want.
Oh, it's the worst for that.
You're always missing out.
Yeah, exactly. And that is just going to lead to dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
So Epictetus suggests restraining desire for things that are outside your control, and instead focus on what is in your control, your virtues, your actions, your responses.
So it's not about like denying yourself pleasure, but about being mindful of where you put your happiness.
Exactly.
So like enjoy that delicious meal, but don't pin your entire mood on like having to have it every single day.
Yes. It's a very subtle but very powerful shift in perspective. And this kind of goes hand in hand with another big idea, the power of perception. So Epictetus, he argues that it's not actually the events themselves that bother us, it's our opinions about them.
So like if I get passed over for a promotion, it's not the decision itself that upsets me, but like my thoughts about what that means.
Exactly. Like, think about it. In chapter 5, he uses the example of Socrates. Socrates wasn't afraid of death because he saw it as just like a natural part of life.
Yeah.
But it was other people's fear, their opinions about death, that made them think that it was terrible.
Oh, so it was their perception of it. Like maybe I'm making myself miserable by thinking this missed promotion means I'm a failure.
Right.
When maybe it's an opportunity for something even better.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard to shift your perspective like that. But that's what the Stoics are all about, examining those judgments and seeing if they really are serving you.
Okay.
Because a lot of times we are creating our own suffering.
Yeah.
By the way, we think about things. Yeah, it really is about the stories we tell ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And this kind of leads to another core principle of Stoicism, which is living in accordance with nature.
Oh, okay.
I know it can sound a little
passive.
Yeah, like just accept whatever happens.
Yeah. Does that mean we shouldn't try to improve things or like fight for what we believe in?
No, not at all. It's not about being passive. It's more about understanding like the natural order of the universe.
Okay.
And aligning our actions with that. Recognizing that some things are they're just out of our control, and fighting against them just creates more suffering.
So it's more about choosing your battles wisely.
Yes.
Like that analogy of the ship at anchor that Epictetus uses.
Yes, in chapter 7.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can enjoy picking up seashells on the shore while the ship is anchored, but be ready to let go
Yeah.
when the captain calls you back. Don't be so attached to those things that you resist the natural flow of events.
Okay. I'm starting to see how all these ideas, like, they all connect. Like, we have control over our reactions, our judgments, but also, like, we need to be adaptable and accept what we can't change.
Yeah.
It's like finding that sweet spot between action and acceptance.
Yes, you got it. And that's where reason comes in. Epictetus really emphasizes this over and over again.
Okay.
Especially in like chapters 9 and X, he really urges us to use our reasoning faculty, especially when we're facing those difficult situations.
So, like, next time I'm about to yell at that slow driver in front of me,
Yes.
I should like take a breath and like engage my rational mind.
Exactly. Or even better, consider what he says in chapter 52.
Okay.
When someone wrongs you, remember they are acting based on what they perceive to be right.
Okay.
So they're not like intentionally trying to be evil or something.
Oh,
They're just operating from their own limited understanding.
that's a helpful reframing.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in thinking everyone's out to get you or something.
Right. So it's about recognizing that everyone is just, including that frustrating driver, they're just doing the best that they can with what they know.
Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
Like controlling what we can, examining our judgments, managing desire, living in accordance with nature, using reason to guide us. But is there any fun in Stoicism?
There is. There totally is. I mean, it's not about denying yourself pleasure or joy or anything. It's about finding a deeper, more lasting kind of happiness that comes from inner peace and virtue.
Okay. I'm intrigued, but like all this philosophy can feel kind of overwhelming. Like how do we actually like put these principles into practice in our like daily lives?
Yeah.
Epictetus must have some tips, right?
He does. He talks about, you should define a character for yourself, a way of being in the world, a personal code you can stick to.
Oh, like a set of guiding principles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
I like that. But like what are some of the specific things he recommends?
Well, he's a big advocate for silence. He's like, speak only when necessary.
Oh, well.
Even then, be brief and to the point.
That one's going to be tough for me.
I know, right? But I mean, think about it. If you were more intentional with our words, it could lead to more meaningful conversations.
Yeah.
He also advises against gossiping, boasting, trying to impress people. You should focus on your actions and your inner state, not on seeking validation from others.
That's hard in our like social media world.
I know. But wouldn't it be great
Yeah.
if we could just like let go of that need for approval?
It would.
Yeah. He even talks about public spectacles and entertainment.
Yeah.
He's like, avoid them as much as possible, or at least go in with a detached mindset. Don't get swept up in the hype.
So skip the Super Bowl party.
Yeah, hardcore, right?
That's hardcore.
But I mean, his point is that these things tend to distract us from what's really important.
Yeah.
So he's not saying you can't enjoy these things, but just don't let them become like the center of your world.
It's like almost like he's advocating for a kind of mindfulness practice, even though that term like didn't exist back then.
Yeah, he talks about not getting caught up in cheering or jeering, just like observing what's happening, letting it be.
Oh, this is all fascinating, but I have to admit, putting this into practice feels daunting.
Yeah.
Like, how do I actually like resist that second piece of cake or not get annoyed when somebody cuts me off in traffic? Like Epictetus has to have some practical advice, right? For handling those temptations and those everyday annoyances.
He does. For temptation, he says, like when you're faced with that pleasurable thing, pause. Consider like both the immediate enjoyment you're going to get and also the potential regret that you might feel later. Weigh that against the satisfaction of like resisting the temptation.
So it's like a cost-benefit analysis.
Yes.
Like enjoy the cake now, maybe feel guilty later versus resist now and, feel proud of my self-control.
Yes,
later.
exactly. It's about making conscious choices rather than just like reacting impulsively.
Yeah.
And then, when it comes to those everyday annoyances, stick to your principles, even when other people don't.
Oh, so like not letting other people's like bad moods or rude behavior dictate my own.
Exactly. It's about choosing to respond with virtue regardless of how other people act. Remember, you're in control of your actions and reactions.
That makes sense. But what about when things are like truly difficult? Like, when we're facing a major setback or a personal crisis.
Yeah.
Like, how does Stoicism help us navigate like those big challenges?
Yeah, well, that's where that living in accordance with nature idea comes in again. Epictetus, he reminds us that we're part of a larger cosmic order.
Okay.
Everything happens for a reason,
Okay.
even if we don't understand it at the time.
So it's about like trusting that there's a bigger picture, even when like life feels really chaotic and unfair.
Exactly. And it's about focusing on what you can control, your own responses, your own actions, your own inner state. Even in the midst of tragedy, you can choose to act with virtue. You can choose your attitude. You can choose how you respond.
That's powerful. So even when everything feels like it's falling apart, we still have the power to choose like how we show up, how we treat others, how we treat ourselves.
Yes. And he gives specific examples, like when you're dealing with a difficult person, remember, they are acting from their own limited understanding. It's not like they're being malicious. They're just coming from this limited perspective. Try to cultivate compassion and understanding.
Okay.
Even when it's hard.
That's easier said than done, though.
I know.
It's so important because, everyone's fighting their own battles.
Yeah.
And reacting with anger just like makes it worse.
Yeah, it just escalates everything.
Yeah, it's about choosing a different path.
Exactly. And remember, Epictetus stresses that we're all interconnected. What affects one person ultimately affects all of us.
Yeah.
So when you act with kindness and compassion, you're actually contributing to the well-being of the whole, not just yourself.
That's a beautiful way to think about it. Like, we're all part of this web of humanity. And our actions, they ripple outward.
And if we focus on living a virtuous life, doing the right thing, cultivating inner peace, all these external circumstances will matter less and less.
Yeah, this all makes sense, like, intellectually. But I have to admit, it feels a little out of reach sometimes. Like, how do I actually stop getting upset when, like, plans go wrong or when someone criticizes me?
Yeah.
How do I, like, achieve that stoic sense of calm amidst the chaos of life?
Yeah, and that's where the real work of Stoicism comes in. It's not a magic formula, it's a practice.
Okay.
And Epictetus gives us a lot of really interesting tools
Okay.
to cultivate those Stoic virtues. One of the most interesting ones is negative visualization.
Negative visualization.
Okay.
That sounds a little counterintuitive.
I know.
Why would I want to focus on, like, negative things?
Right, but bear with me. It's about mentally preparing yourself for the possibility of negative events, like illness, loss, setbacks, not to like dwell on them or become pessimistic or anything, but to just accept that these things are a part of life.
Okay.
And that we have a choice in how we deal with them.
So if I'm like going into a big presentation,
Yeah.
instead of assuming it'll go perfectly, I like imagine potential problems.
Yes.
Like technical difficulties, tough questions.
Yes.
And how I would handle them.
Exactly. So you're not inviting these things to happen.
Right.
You're just like building up mental resilience so that you're not thrown off balance.
Okay.
If they do happen. It's like, practicing for a game.
Yeah.
Going through those different scenarios so that you're ready.
Okay. That actually makes sense. So it's not about creating anxiety, but like releasing it by like acknowledging what we can't control and preparing for different possibilities. It's a way to like take back some of that control.
You're getting it. And this can apply to so many areas of life. Like you're worried about a flight delay. Okay, visualize how you would use that time productively.
Okay.
Instead of getting frustrated.
Yeah.
It's about shifting your mindset from fear and anxiety to confidence and resilience.
This negative visualization thing is pretty cool.
Yeah.
What other like Stoic practices does Epictetus suggest?
Well, he's also a big proponent of reflecting on your day.
Okay.
Reviewing your actions and seeing where you could have done better.
Like a mental debrief.
Yeah, like a mental debrief.
But what's the purpose of that? To like beat ourselves up over mistakes?
No. It's more about identifying patterns, habits and tendencies, seeing where you might be acting out of alignment with your values.
Oh, okay.
Noticing those times when you let emotions get the better of you.
Yeah.
Or acted impulsively.
So it's about building self-awareness so we can make more conscious choices.
Exactly. You can't change what you don't acknowledge.
Right.
So this daily reflection, it helps you course correct.
Okay.
And make better choices in the future. It's about using self-awareness as a tool for growth.
These Stoic practices are really resonating with me. But I have to ask, is Stoicism all about like self-discipline and self-improvement.
Mm-hmm.
What about our relationships with others?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Epictetus actually addresses that, the importance of relationships.
Okay.
He really emphasizes that we are all interconnected. We're part of this larger social fabric. It's not about isolating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's about recognizing that your actions have an impact on other people.
So Stoicism can actually make us better friends and family members and citizens.
He believes so.
Wow.
By cultivating virtues like patience, compassion, understanding, you're better able to navigate all the complexities of
Yeah.
relationships.
Like if we're less reactive and more understanding,
Yeah,
we're going to be better friends, partners, colleagues.
exactly.
I could see that.
It's about bringing those same principles of self-control and reasoned action
Right?
into your interactions with other people.
So how does that work in practice? Like how do we handle conflicts?
Yeah, well, remember that principle we talked about like not judging other people's actions?
Mm-hmm.
So Epictetus reminds us that when someone does wrong us,
Yeah.
they are acting from their own limited perspective, not out of malice.
Right. So instead of assuming they're trying to hurt us or something,
Yeah.
try to understand where they're coming from and why they might be acting that way.
Exactly. It's about cultivating compassion and understanding, even when it's hard. And it doesn't mean you have to condone their behavior or anything, but
Right.
you can approach the situation with more empathy,
Yeah.
which will make a big difference in how you respond.
Yeah, it's like that saying, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about.
Mm.
And Stoicism kind of gives us a framework
Yeah.
for remembering that and
Right.
choosing to act with compassion rather than judgment.
Well said. And this really ties back to that power of perception.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the event itself, but our interpretation of it.
Yeah, that's a key theme here for sure.
Yeah.
It's one thing to intellectually grasp these concepts. It's another to actually embody them.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any downsides to Stoicism that we should be aware of?
Well, yeah, there are some criticisms for sure. One is that, focusing so much on controlling your emotions can lead to just suppressing them entirely.
Yeah.
You're not allowing yourself to actually fully experience the full range of human emotions.
So we might end up bottling things up and not being authentic
Mhm.
or vulnerable.
That's a valid concern. And it's important to remember that Stoicism isn't about denying or suppressing emotions. It's about recognizing them and understanding them.
Right.
And then, choosing how you want to respond.
So not being emotionless, but being in control of your emotions.
Yeah.
Exactly. Allow yourself to feel your emotions fully.
Yeah.
But don't let them dictate your actions or your behavior. And that takes practice. It's not always easy to
Mhm.
stay calm and rational,
Yeah.
when you're angry or upset. But with time and effort, you can develop those skills and that mindset
Yeah.
to really manage those emotions effectively.
This idea of not being ruled by emotions, that's
Yeah.
really powerful. So often, we just react impulsively and
Yes.
regret it later. And it seems like Stoicism offers a way to break that cycle.
That's really the heart of it. It gives you that framework for understanding your emotions and making conscious choices about how to respond rather than just reacting on autopilot.
So instead of reacting impulsively, we take a step back,
Yeah.
assess the situation,
Yeah,
and then choose a course of action that's aligned with our values and goals.
exactly. And that can make a huge difference in how you experience life, helping you avoid unnecessary drama and conflict and stress.
I'm really seeing the appeal of this Stoic approach, but I'm still a bit hung up on that negative visualization thing. Why would I want to spend time thinking about all the bad things that could happen?
I understand your hesitation. It seems so counterintuitive, but remember, it's not about dwelling on negativity or becoming pessimistic. It's about mentally preparing for the inevitable challenges in life so we're not caught off guard when they happen.
So instead of living in a fancy world where everything's perfect,
Yeah.
we're acknowledging that bad things can and do happen, and we're developing the mental and emotional resilience to deal with them.
Exactly. And you know what? By mentally preparing for those setbacks, you're actually less likely to be thrown off balance when they
Yeah.
occur. It's like, you practice for a big game.
Yeah.
If you run through all the scenarios in your mind,
yeah.
you're more likely to stay calm and focused under pressure.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've stressed about something that never even happened.
I know.
And if I had taken the time to mentally prepare for the possibility, I
Yeah.
probably could have saved myself a lot of anxiety.
Exactly. Negative visualization is not about creating anxiety. It's about releasing it. It's about acknowledging that we don't control everything,
Right.
but we do control how we respond.
Okay. I'm starting to come around on this negative visualization idea, but how do you actually do it? Like
Yeah.
without getting overwhelmed by all the negative thoughts.
Well, that's an important point. It's crucial to approach this practice with balance and perspective.
Okay.
You don't want to get lost in negativity or start catastrophizing or anything like that.
Right.
Focus on specific situations and
Yeah.
think about them. Think about them realistically and constructively.
So instead of just imagining everything going wrong,
Yeah.
focus on like specific challenges I might encounter
Yeah.
and like think about how I would handle them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And try framing your visualizations in a way that empowers you. So instead of thinking, what if this terrible thing happens? You think, if this challenging situation arises, I will handle it with grace and strength.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's like you're shifting your mindset from fear to confidence.
And that's the whole point, building mental and emotional resilience so
Oh,
that you can
okay.
face those challenges with courage and composure.
Okay, I'm officially adding negative visualization to my list of Stoic practices to try out. But before we move on, is there anything else to keep in mind?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a substitute for action.
Okay.
Prepare mentally, but don't let it paralyze you from actually, taking risks or pursuing your goals.
So it's not about avoiding challenges,
Yeah.
but about being prepared for them.
Exactly. And remember, it's just one tool in the Stoic toolkit.
Right.
We talked about controlling your thoughts, your reactions, examining your judgments, managing desire, living in accordance with nature. It's about finding the practices that resonate with you and that you can actually incorporate into your life.
Yeah. This is all so insightful.
Yeah.
I'm really starting to see like the depth and the practicality of Stoicism. But I have to ask, what about those times when things are really rough?
Yeah.
Like, when we're facing a major setback or a personal crisis.
Yeah.
Does Stoicism have anything to offer in those moments when it feels like everything's falling apart?
Yeah, absolutely. Even in those darkest moments, Stoicism can offer guidance and support. One of the key principles I think that could help is just focusing on what you can control. When everything feels chaotic and out of control, it can be really grounding to remember that you still have control over your thoughts, your
Yeah.
reactions, your
Yeah.
choices.
So even if we can't control what's happening around us,
Yeah,
we can control how we respond to it.
exactly. And that can be incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
It gives you a sense of agency, even when everything else feels totally out of control.
It's like even in the midst of a storm,
Yeah.
we can still choose to like steer our own ship.
Yeah, perfectly put. And another helpful principle, I think, is that idea of accepting what we can't change. And this doesn't mean giving up or resigning yourself to something that you don't like.
Okay.
It just means acknowledging that there are some things that are they're outside of your control,
Yeah.
and fighting against them only creates more suffering.
So it's about surrendering to what is and like
Yeah.
focusing our energy on what we can do something about.
Exactly. It can be a difficult practice, but ultimately it's very liberating.
Yeah.
It helps you let go of things you can't change and just focus on making the best of the situation that you're in. Instead of wasting energy on, wishing things were different, you can accept reality
Right.
and start taking steps to move forward.
This is all incredibly helpful. But what about grief? Like, how does Stoicism address like the pain of loss? Surely we're not expected to just like stoically accept it.
Yeah. That's a profound question. Grief is one of the most challenging human experiences, but even here, Stoicism, I think, offers guidance and support. It's not about denying or suppressing your grief.
Okay.
Epictetus acknowledges that it's a natural response to loss.
So it's okay to grieve, but like we shouldn't let it consume us
Right.
or like prevent us from living our lives.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, honoring your grief, but also finding a way to move forward. And one Stoic principle I think that can help is remembering that everything in life is temporary.
Okay.
Nothing is permanent, not even our own lives.
I can see how that might be like comforting, but it also sounds a little bleak.
It might seem that way at first, but consider this. If everything is impermanent,
Yeah.
then we can start to really appreciate the present moment more fully.
Yeah.
Cherish the time that we have with our loved ones, savor experiences.
Yeah.
And then when we do experience loss, grieve fully, but also remember that grief too will eventually pass.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. It's about like embracing the present moment, finding joy in the simple things, and trusting that even grief, as painful as it is part of like the natural flow of life.
You got it. And that's really at the heart of Stoic philosophy,
Right.
finding contentment and happiness, not in external circumstances, but in your own inner state.
This has been so enlightening, but I have to confess, the idea of living a Stoic life still feels a little intimidating.
Yeah,
It just seems to require so much discipline and self-control.
I understand it. It does require effort and commitment. But remember, it's not about becoming a superhuman or suppressing your emotions or anything like that. It's just about developing habits and practices
Right.
that can help you live more intentionally and more in alignment with your values.
So progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And just start small. Don't try to overhaul your whole life overnight. Just focus on incorporating 1 or 2 Stoic practices into your daily routine,
Okay.
like the negative visualization or the daily reflection. Find the things that resonate with you, that you can stick with over time.
Okay.
And remember, you're not alone in this journey. There's so many people out there exploring Stoicism and finding it really valuable for living a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
Oh,
There's a whole community of people who are striving to live with more wisdom and resilience. So, you can find support and inspiration from others who are on the same path.
oh, this has been an incredible deep dive.
Yeah.
I've learned so much about Stoicism.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to start incorporating some of these principles and practices into my own life.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, is there anything else we should touch on?
Yeah, I think we should talk about one of the most fundamental aspects of Stoicism that we haven't explicitly addressed yet.
Okay.
And that's the idea of virtue as the ultimate good.
I've heard of that, but to be honest, it's always sounded a little vague to me.
Yeah.
What is it? What does it actually mean?
So the Stoics, they believe that virtue is the only true good in life. Oh,
Like it's the foundation of happiness and fulfillment.
okay.
And they define virtue as living in accordance with nature, which really means living in accordance with reason.
So it's not about external achievements or possessions. It's about developing our inner character.
You got it. And they kind of break down virtue into 4 cardinal virtues.
Oh.
Wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance.
Oh, yeah. I vaguely remember those from a philosophy class I took. Can you remind me what those mean in the context of Stoicism?
Yeah. So wisdom is about, understanding the world and our place in it. Justice is about treating other people fairly and equitably. Courage is about facing challenges with strength and determination. And then temperance is about moderating our desires and impulses.
So essentially, Stoicism is about becoming the best version of ourselves
Yeah.
by cultivating these virtues.
Exactly. And by focusing on virtue, they believed we could achieve a state of inner peace and tranquility that isn't dependent on those external circumstances. It's like instead of chasing happiness, we cultivate it from within.
Precisely. The Stoics believe that virtue is its own reward.
Okay.
So even if you face setbacks, the satisfaction of living a virtuous life, that's enough to bring you happiness.
This making me rethink my whole approach to life. Instead of focusing on what I can get.
Yeah.
Maybe I could focus on what I can contribute.
That's a fantastic insight. It's about living a life of purpose and meaning by, striving to be your best self and contributing to the well-being of others.
Wow, this has been an eye-opening deep dive. But before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listener?
Yeah, just this. Stoicism isn't a one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay.
It's a philosophy that offers a lot of guidance, but ultimately it's up to each individual to decide how to apply those principles.
So it's a toolkit that we can use to build a life that's meaningful to us.
Exactly. And it takes time and effort, but the rewards are worth it. By cultivating those Stoic virtues, we can develop inner peace and resilience and navigate all of life's challenges with grace and strength.
Well said. This has been an incredible conversation.
Yeah, it has.
I'm feeling inspired to start incorporating some of these Stoic principles into my own life. But before we sign off, is there anything else you'd like to leave our listener with?
Just one final thought. Stoicism isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about striving to be your best self, even when you fall short.
Yeah.
And just remembering that every day is a new opportunity to learn, grow, and live a life that's aligned with your values.
I love that. Progress, not perfection. Yeah, progress, not perfection. I like that.
Right.
That's something we can all aspire to. Well, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. It's been a true pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine. I'm always happy to share my passion for Stoicism.
I know our listener has gotten so much out of this, and I have no doubt they'll be joining us again for our next deep dive. Until then, stay curious, keep learning, and keep striving to be the best version of yourself.
And remember Epictetus's words, everything has two handles. Which one will you choose?
See you next time.